I discovered a secret warning from my boyfriend's ex, and the terrifying truth was revealed. The day I discovered a hidden note in my apartment, everything changed. I never imagined that a dusty piece of paper found in the back of an old cabinet would become the catalyst that unraveled the truth about my relationship. If you've ever wondered about those small red flags you chose to ignore or the whispers of doubt in your heart that you pushed away, this story is for you. What you're about to hear isn't just a story about love or betrayal. It's about learning to trust yourself when everything else seems to crumble. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday. I was home cleaning the apartment that Steve and I shared. We had been together for 2 years, living together for almost 8 months. I was scrubbing through the back of our kitchen cabinet, a place that clearly hadn't been touched in years, when my fingers brushed against something wedged into the corner. It was a piece of folded paper. I pulled it out, expecting it to be some old grocery list or a takeout menu. But what I found was a note that wasn't meant for me. Yet it felt like it had been written directly to me. The note read, "Dear Steve's future girlfriend, I know it's you reading this because he'd never clean back here. I'm putting this here because I'm leaving him soon and I want to warn you. He will not clean, he will not listen, and he will make everything feel like it's your fault. It's not your fault. He's just an incompetent man. I'm leaving him, and I suggest you do the same." It was signed, "Best wishes, Natalia." The words echoed in my mind. He will not clean. He will make everything feel like it's your fault. There was a strange familiarity in those words, an uncomfortable recognition that tugged at something I hadn't yet admitted to myself. Was Natalia just a bitter ex? Or was she genuinely trying to save someone else from her mistakes? I brought the note to Steve that very night, still unsure of how I should feel. When I showed Steve the note, his reaction was instant and intense. He ripped it up without a second thought, dismissing Natalia as crazy and petty. He accused me of taking the words of an ex over his, of believing in her manipulative attempts to ruin our happiness. "She's just trying to get in your head," he insisted, his face reddening as he spoke. His anger was almost more frightening than the contents of the note, his immediate need to destroy it, to erase its existence, only made me feel more uncertain. In the hours that followed, we argued in circles. I tried to tell him it wasn't just about the note. I tried to explain that it was about the pattern, about how I had noticed that he was cleaning less and less, that I was the one reminding him to take out the trash or bring his dishes to the sink. It wasn't always like this. When we first moved in together, things were split fairly evenly, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, the burden had shifted more and more onto me. And now, with the note in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something deeper, something that wouldn't just disappear. Steve wouldn't hear it. He deflected every concern, every feeling I tried to express. He twisted my words, making me feel as though I was the one in the wrong for even bringing it up. By the end of the night, I was exhausted. I left our apartment and went to a friend's house. I just needed space. Needed to breathe. When I woke up the next morning, I wasn't sure what to do. On one hand, Steve had always been good to me in many ways. He was affectionate, he got along with my family, bought me flowers on my birthday, and told me he loved me every single day. But there was a darkness there that I had never fully acknowledged. A side of him that made me feel small and uncertain. And now, with Natalia's warning echoing in my ears, I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. I decided to reach out to Natalia. It wasn't an easy decision. Steve had told me time and again how manipulative and toxic she was. But I needed to hear her side of the story. It didn't take long to find her. Her name was unique enough that a quick search on social media brought her up. I sent her a simple message, explaining who I was and what I had found, and asking if she'd be willing to talk. Natalia's response was immediate. She told me that she'd been expecting to hear from me ever since she found out that Steve had a new girlfriend. She said she hoped that the note would help, that she wanted to save me from what she'd been through. Her messages were filled with a painful honesty. She spoke of the ways Steve had made her doubt herself, how he had gradually eroded her confidence until she barely recognized herself. "He made me feel like I was always the problem," she wrote, "like I could never do anything right, no matter how hard I tried." Reading her words felt like reading my own thoughts, thoughts I hadn't even allowed myself to fully form. The more we talked, the more I realized how similar our experiences were. It wasn't just about cleaning, it was about respect, about partnership, About the way he subtly made everything my responsibility while presenting himself as the perfect boyfriend to the outside world. He had an uncanny ability to charm people, to make them see only what he wanted them to see. It wasn't long before I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay with someone who made me feel this way, who refused to take responsibility for anything, and who was willing to gaslight me into believing that I was the one with the problem. When I returned to the apartment, I went with my brother for support. Steve was at work, which gave me the time and space to pack up my things and get out without confrontation. But what I found when I walked into the apartment made my blood run cold. The place was a mess. My belongings were strewn across the floor. My clothes ripped and scattered. Dishes that I had brought with me were broken, their shards lying across the kitchen. And then there were the pets. Steve had left the doors to the frog and snake enclosures open, leaving my beloved animals in danger. My heart pounded in my chest as I searched the apartment, finally finding my snake curled up in a closet corner, unharmed but terrified. That was the final nail in the coffin. Any lingering doubts I had about leaving vanished in that moment. This wasn't just about cleaning, or arguments, or even the note. It was about who Steve was, about what he was capable of when he felt he was losing control. He wasn't the person I thought I knew, and I realized that I had been blinded by his charm, by the little acts of love that masked the darker parts of his personality. With Natalia's help, I was able to get out. She even offered to come with me to talk to the landlord, explaining the situation and helping me break the lease. Her support was invaluable. Not only did she help me navigate the logistics of leaving, but she also helped me see that what I was experiencing was abuse. It wasn't physical, but it was just as damaging: the manipulation, the gaslighting, the way he tried to control my emotions and my actions. It was a slow erosion of who I was, and I was grateful to have escaped before it got any worse. In the end, Natalia and I even found some humor in the situation. She told me that she had left 3 notes for Steve, the one I found in the cabinet, one taped to the bottom of the vacuum cleaner, and one in the crumb catcher of the toaster. We laughed about how Steve had apparently found the one in the toaster and cleaned it out but hadn't bothered to check anywhere else. It was a small victory, a reminder that sometimes people who think they're in control are really just fooling themselves. But the real victory was reclaiming myself. I realized that love isn't supposed to be a test of how much you can endure, or how much you're willing to put up with. It's not supposed to make you feel small, or uncertain, or constantly questioning your own worth. Love should be about partnership, about respect, and about lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. To anyone listening who finds themselves questioning their own relationship, who feels like they're always the one at fault, always the one trying to fix things, I hope my story helps you see that you deserve better. You deserve someone who listens, who respects you, and who makes you feel loved without conditions. It's easy to get caught up in the good moments, to tell yourself that things aren't really that bad. But the truth is, you shouldn't have to convince yourself that your relationship is worth staying in. It should be obvious, it should be safe, and it should make you feel like the best version of yourself. Steve was a chapter in my life that I'm glad to have closed. I'm moving forward now, focusing on myself, on my friends, on building a life that makes me happy. And I'm grateful to Natalia, not just for her warning, but for her friendship, for helping me see that I wasn't alone, and that I wasn't crazy for wanting more. This is my story, and I hope it serves as a reminder that you should never settle for anything less than what you deserve. Abuse doesn't always come in the form of raised fists or harsh words. Sometimes it's the subtle erosion of who you are, the slow wearing down of your confidence until you barely recognize yourself. But you can always take it back. You can always choose yourself. And you can always find a way out. And to Natalia, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for leaving that note, for caring enough to warn a stranger, and for reminding me that I deserve more. We all do. My wife cheated with my stepbrother, got pregnant, and I told her parents. Now she's cut off from her inheritance. It all began with an ordinary life, a simple love story that anyone might find themselves living. A man in his early 30s, happily married to a wonderful woman he thought was his soulmate. They had known each other for years, from friends to partners, then eventually husband and wife. It seemed like everything was falling perfectly into place. Until, suddenly, everything started unraveling. Our protagonist, let's call him David, never saw it coming. He worked hard, built a stable home, and loved his wife dearly. He considered himself lucky to have married someone so caring and smart. His wife, Anna, was his best friend and partner in every way. They had been married for 2 years. Their relationship mostly smooth sailing, and everything seemed to be heading towards a bright future. But then, David's stepbrother, Darren, entered their lives. Darren was a different kind of person, the unpredictable sibling, who always had some outlandish idea or a life crisis at every turn. Darren had lost his job, a consequence of poor life choices and questionable decisions. He was the free spirit, the black sheep, but he was also family. When Darren asked to stay at David's home for a few weeks while he toured New York, David's initial response was reluctance. Darren had always been trouble, someone who couldn't be relied on. But Anna said she was okay with it. And David, out of family obligation, relented. The arrangement started smoothly enough. Darren seemed to have taken David's ground rules to heart, adhering to them without much fuss. He was often out late at night, touring the city and experiencing the nightlife. But gradually, things started to change. Darren started staying home more. David began noticing small things. Anna would be home unexpectedly early. And Darren would be there as well. They claimed to have met outside by coincidence. But something about it made David feel uneasy. Darren and Anna's behavior became a puzzle David couldn't solve. A strange sense of something being not quite right. David didn't want to be paranoid. He loved his wife and trusted her. But that gnawing feeling of suspicion kept coming back. It wasn't until Anna announced she was pregnant that David's world truly began to crumble. They had been careful, very careful. They were waiting for the right time to have children. The timing seemed far too convenient. Darren had been living with them for 2 months. And now Anna was pregnant. A chilling thought settled in David's mind, one he couldn't shake off. Could it be Darren's? David was trapped in a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, fear. But amidst all these emotions was also the need for the truth. He confronted Anna, not wanting to jump to conclusions, but seeking clarity. Anna's reaction, however, was far from reassuring. She became defensive, enraged. Even, David requested a paternity test to clear his doubts. But Anna flatly refused, accusing him of being monstrous for even thinking she had cheated on him. The following days were hellish. Anna disappeared without explanation, and when she came back, she coldly informed David that she had ended the pregnancy. She told him it was to save their marriage, that this would help them move on and forget all the foolish accusations. But David knew, in that very moment, that he couldn't move on from this. He saw the person in front of him, and it was no longer the woman he loved, it was a stranger. The truth was out in the open, raw and harsh, and it felt like every word she spoke drove a knife further into his heart. David had had enough. He walked out, called his lawyer, and initiated a divorce. It wasn't just about infidelity anymore, it was about realizing that the love he thought was so strong had never been what he imagined. The divorce was messy. Anna tried to fight for alimony, but David was determined to ensure she got nothing. He spoke to Darren too, who eventually confessed. Darren, surprisingly, seemed remorseful. He admitted to everything, and apologized to David. It was small solace, but at least David got his confirmation. David's confrontation with Anna's parents marked another crucial chapter. In a moment of pettiness, but also a need for validation, he informed Anna's mother of the affair and the abortion. He wanted someone else to share in his disbelief, in his shock at what had happened to his life. Her parents, particularly her father, were devastated and disowned her, cutting off any financial ties. It was a cruel outcome, but in David's mind, it was a deserved one. Despite the closure, there was no sense of victory for David. He found himself questioning everything, every memory, every shared laugh, every intimate moment they had. It all seemed like a lie. In the weeks following the divorce, David learned from his father that Anna and Darren were seeing each other again. The pain of that revelation was numbing, yet strangely liberating. It only confirmed to David that leaving had been the right decision. As David reflected on the entire ordeal, he realized how easy it had been to overlook the warning signs. His desire for stability, his love for Anna, and his inherent belief in the goodness of people had all blinded him to the reality unfolding in front of him. It wasn't his fault. He had loved deeply and had tried to be the best husband he could be. But he also realized that sometimes, people are not who they appear to be. And that was a hard lesson to learn. David's story is not just about betrayal, it's about finding the strength to face the truth. No matter how painful, it's about trusting your instincts, even when you don't want to, and knowing when to let go. Life has a way of showing you people's true colors. And when it does, it's up to you to decide what you're willing to accept. Betrayal can feel like the end of the world, especially when it comes from those closest to you. But there is life beyond that pain. David learned that letting go of something broken was better than desperately trying to fix it. He found himself again in the process, something he thought he had lost forever in the ruins of his marriage. To anyone facing betrayal, the lesson is simple but profound. Your worth isn't tied to the loyalty of others. You deserve to be loved, respected, and valued. If someone in your life cannot provide that, then it's time to let them go. The pain will be intense, and there will be dark days, but there is light on the other side. And sometimes, the end of something you thought was everything turns out to be the beginning of something far greater, the chance to rediscover who you truly are.